do have a dog. Welcome back to part B. Here's my dog. Let me see if I can show him to you. Oh, come here. Come here, doggo. Yeah. He tolerates me holding him.
Oh.
This is Gooby. He's a Dachshund Beagle.
Oh, sweet.
Say hello, Gooby. Say hello to the friends at home. See? They're right there. They're on the other side of that lens. Right? Yeah? You don't care about that. Okay. Alrighty.
He just wants to live his own life.
Yeah. Well, he likes the attention. He loves to be... He definitely loves hanging with me. He just gets confused, He doesn't know what the internet is. I'm not sure I know what the... well, anyways, that's a story for another time. So, to those who joined us, Part B, I hope you watched Part A. If you didn't, go back and watch Part A, because you need to see... You gotta get the context of everything we're going to talk about. I thought about so did you come into this, and don't tell me what type you thought that you came in with, like, think you were, whatever, but did you have it narrowed down at all to one or more types coming in as to a theory you had
I
on
have
personality type?
more so a quadrant, which I narrowed it down. But
Okay.
maybe I'm completely delusional and I'm something completely else. So.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't remember the names of the quadras, but I know which types are in each one. So I'll tell you the cognitive functions for those who are playing at home and know what that is. I'll tell you the cognitive functions that I observe, and then that'll tell you the quadra that we'll see if we agree on the quadra. What is the quadra, friends? The quadra is that there are each of the 16 types in the MBTI. There's 4 different groups that have the same cognitive preferences, just in a different order. So those 4 types can seem like each other at times, depending on circumstances. So the two things that I notice a lot of when it comes to how you make a lot of your decisions, it's sort of based on reason and experience. You're looking at your mistakes that you've made. You're looking at the things you've learned. So to me, that implies introverted thinking, introverted sensing usage. And then when it comes to your kind of grasp, to me, it's further that there's more proof when you think about things like your relationship with feelings, and how sometimes your feelings can be a bit confusing to you, or need some unpacking or whatever, which to me implies introverted thinking, extroverted feeling. Extroverted feelers tend to do a little better with knowing how other people's feelings are, even if they don't want to engage, even if their preferences, even if they're annoyed by it, they still have us. They still have that sense of other people's feelings, and then the question of other things that, like extroverted intuition versus introverted intuition. I think people who prefer extroverted intuition like to make a mess and see where it goes a little bit. You know what I mean? Or they like to make some mistakes and see where the trajectory is going to take them next, because that's how they negotiate problems. Is to iterate and ideate. Whereas people who prefer introverted intuition seem to be much more, they kind of like have the final vision in mind, kind of, and then they work towards it. So you may be able to guess which type I think you might be, probably.
You think that I'm some sort of NTP, right?
Mm-hmm. So is that different than what you were thinking of initially? Yes?
Actually, yes.
Interesting. So let's talk about like cognitive function wise, which different cognitive functional pair did you think that you preferred more?
I thought I would use SEN and I, and
Mm-hmm.
then TE and FI. Uh,
Interesting.
actually,
Well, all right, let's talk about that. Um, First of all, people who prefer extroverted thinking, well, it depends on how much they prefer to use it, but generally speaking, they're going to do better with being um, a prime mover when it comes to other people, when it comes to group situations. They understand protocols really well, and they are able to everybody just sort of trusts them as like, oh, these people know what's going on. Um, they know what other people are thinking somehow, um, and with your you know way of thinking, it seems to me like a lot more introverted thinking, because you strike me as somebody who is spending a lot more time pursuing your own logical means, I guess I could say. I could be wrong on that though. You might find maybe extroverted thinking resonates more with you. I'm not sure. Did you think maybe possibly INTJ? Is that where you were leaning towards coming in?
I was stuck between ISFP and INTJ. Actually,
Mm.
leaning towards ISFP slightly more due to
Mm-hmm.
thinking about who I want to be and molding myself into that. I guess I interpreted that as FI in some way, whereas TI thinking is usually I don't know if it was deductive or inductive. I don't know the terms. I mix them up always, but uh, I think TE goes from the evidence, and then I don't know if that was C, but from going from the evidence to the theory instead of from the theory to the evidence.
Do
That
you?
makes sense.
Yeah. So, um, well, I think TI users use evidence and theory to build their models, and TE users prefer to use the models of other people, or to use pre-existing models, or to honestly to build other models, to build new models for other people.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
in my experience with TE users, I guess they do really well with rules and protocols and existing paradigms. But once you and like really like step-by-step procedures. But once it starts to get outside of the bounds of that and starts to require a lot more rationalization, I guess, a lot more research into, or figuring out. Once you have to start coming up with your own way of thinking, that's where extroverted thinkers start to struggle to a degree. Um, but of course, INTJs, they use their introverted intuition to kind of, I feel like, get around that limitation to a degree. But still, I think I've noticed that. So I mean, that's interesting. So FI versus TI. I mean,
Both are identity functions eventually, but the way in which they identify themselves or the individual are through different means. I think FI uses like morals and ethics or
mhm,
moral and ethical like principles in order to identify what the individual eventually accepts and what not. Whereas it's TI who uses their own logical framework, where everything is more so like a jigsaw puzzle and everything fits together
mhm,
in order
mhm,
to make sense of the world, and use NE or SE, depending on the TI user,
mhm,
in order to gather information for that framework.
mhm, mhm. Yeah. So I mean, you seem to get it pretty well. Um, but I don't know how to say it other than like when I talk to NISE users, there's this tendency to generalize and to synthesize a lot.
To make very broad statements, the higher the NI is eventually.
Yes, yes. And I don't get hardly any of that from you, feel like. Just my observation again, like whenever I run into an NI user, I just know it because I do it myself, I hear lots of generalizations.
You did that in the beginning of the session, actually.
Did
Like,
I make a
what are
generalization?
I think you asked something like along the lines of what is the principle? What are principles that you ascribe to, or something like that?
What's a
You know?
belief you hold to, or you have strongly believe strongly?
Yeah,
That one.
something like that. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. NI users have a ton of those. Things they believe that that they truths. Um,
Depending on the angle that you look at the question or your definition of belief, you can answer the question differently,
you could.
depending on the context.
Yes, and
So
that's why I like to ask open-ended questions so I can hear. But yeah, go ahead. Feel free to continue the thought there.
I think a lot of misunderstanding actually comes from not knowing how to interpret or not having the same understanding of certain like words or certain models. So people get confused all the time. You see that in MBTI, for example. If you look at
Mm-hmm,
personality database, which
mm-hmm,
is a
mm-hmm.
platform that is extremely cancerous,
Yeah.
actually, you see people typing fictional characters
Mm-hmm.
very badly because they try to mix up MBTI, socionics, and Enneagram all the time, even though these are systems that might have correlations but aren't necessarily the
Right.
same,
Right.
because MBTI or cognitive functions try to assess how someone reasons and how someone processes information, whereas
Mm-hmm.
Enneagram, for example, which tries to get under the certain motivations of people, which can be molded depending on your life experiences and
Mm-hmm.
your environment. For example, if you never got loved or stuff like that, then you may crave certain validation from other people, which doesn't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily mean that you're an FE or TE Dom,
Mm-hmm.
but more so indicates that you might be an Enneagram 3 or 2, and a lot of people use that as an excuse in order to type, I don't know, for example, ESTPs or other types like that as ENTJs or ESTJs, or maybe FE DOMs, even
Mm.
though that's just stupid.
Well, that sounds like something a TI Dom would say. That's just stupid. Uh, no, but I guess I don't really I don't really know a whole lot. You clearly know more about Enneagram and
No.
socionics than I do. Well, I do know what my Enneagram is, but that's from looking at all the different ones and figuring out which one I know that I'm like. But other than that, I don't have like it memorized or anything like that. Um, but yeah, I think you've made a lot of really good observations there. All of which I think I can agree with. I mean, I think when I look at like what was it, the personality database that you mentioned, I hardly take that seriously because it's just random people's opinions on the internet, and honestly the whole like typing people over video, like watching a video and trying to type somebody, is to me is very scrupulous because how can you to me it seems like you have to have a conversation with somebody, and because you don't know what's really going on inside their head, all you can do is just ask questions and like observe, but a video of somebody, they could be I mean, it could be obvious. I don't know. Sometimes it's obvious, but sometimes it's really hard to know. Um,
I think especially if someone is very ingrained into the MBTI culture and they have
mhm,
a like type in mind that they want to
mhm.
be because they think, okay, this type is better than the other,
Right.
especially when you are in your early days of MBTI.
Because certain ones
Then
get favored and some certain ones get kind of shat on.
exactly. I think there
Yeah.
are. on YouTube, for example, there are INTJs that think they're INTJs even though it's obvious they're not, or even though
Mm-hmm.
it's obvious that they play a persona.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's not directly obvious, there are a lot of people that are gathering evidence.
Right. So here's a question I have for you. Let's compare you and me. Why don't you ask me some questions and try to find a reference point? Well, let, before we do that, let me ask you this. Um, what do you think about my INTP theory?
I think it's interesting because INTP was not a type that I directly like considered. Well,
Mm-hmm.
I did when I took the tests like a few years ago. That was a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
But the more I saw like very obvious NE uses, the more I knew, okay, this is not me.
Sure.
But maybe I am in an unhealthy state. I don't know.
Well, no, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're in an unhealthy state. Um, I thought about it while I was going on the break, because uh, some other INTPs that I know were very non-committal kind of people, and that doesn't seem like to be necessarily a problem that you have. But I also acknowledge that every person is different, and I can't necessarily say that because I've run into 3 people that were a certain way that means person number 4 is or isn't a certain. I won't know for sure. I can only guess. Um, the uh, the thing the thing about smelling the roses, really, that's an extroverted people who prefer extroverted sensing are very uh, kind of in the moment with their sensory experiences and tend to indulge in momentary sensory experience, in the moment kinds of sensory experiences. So the fact that you sort of so quickly cast off the idea of sitting at a bench and just enjoying the environment made me think low extroverted sensing preference. Um, whereas I have known ISFPs who were they were often indulgent in sensory kinds of experiences, um, perhaps even to their own detriment.
I think the only sensory experiences that I have on a regular basis are eating chocolate chips,
Mm.
watching movies and TV shows all day, all night, or playing games. But that's all sensory like indulgence that I have. I don't go out. Well, now obviously don't, but uh, I don't go to parties. I don't drink alcohol. I'm not.
Sure.
Uh,
No, I'm not. Yeah, and I'm not saying just because you don't that
yeah.
that you're not an ISFP. You could be an ISFP, but there's another thing that I've noticed in the ISFPs I've known, and actually the higher extroverted sensors that I've known. But I don't know. But you're gonna. This is such an intangible thing, so you're gonna have to just take my word for it. I don't know how to describe
Okay.
it other than static. It's just sort of static, but then when sensory input happens, then there's like a signal. So um, that's the best way I can describe it. But
So they
do
are
you know
in
what I mean?
like they are in a scanning mode. They're in standby mode, scan the
Standby
environment,
mode.
and
Yes, standby mode.
once something hits their radar,
Yeah.
they get into action mode,
Yes.
so to
Yes.
say.
Yes.
It's
That's what
an
I'm.
on
That's
and off switch.
and I notice I do it too, actually, to a degree. Not nearly as much as a higher extroverted sensing preferring person
Hmm.
does, but yeah, sometimes I will be in standby mode, or I'll need to be in standby mode for a long time. I feel like I need to be to recharge. Like I'm just like recharging my battery. Um, so I don't know if you relate to that or not.
Well, I can partly relate to that, but sometimes sometimes you're extremely aware of what's going on. Sometimes you're too tired for that. Uh, but aside from
Mhm.
that, you're just there. You don't do shit. You're not fucking Chad Thundercock, who's always aware of what's going on around
Uh-huh.
him with all the people or the environment. So I'm just vibing.
Right. Well, okay, so what do you think about the idea of comparing our personalities and trying to see how we're the same and different as a way to try to find
I think I'm more specific. I think, especially compared to you,
mhm,
you, as you mentioned earlier, you're more so a broad person someone who makes very generalized statements.
mhm,
I do that sometimes when I have to, or when I don't want to deal with certain people, obviously. But
mhm,
aside from that, I want to have certain specifics. If I want to ask someone for a favor, I tell them exactly, okay, this is what you have to do. Can you do it? Yes or
mhm.
no? Or give
Right,
out certain give out certain details so
right.
they don't have an excuse in case they mess it up.
Right. Yep. I think the other thing that you mentioned too is your the connection that you to your mistakes, and I don't even remember my mistakes honestly. um, and the other higher NI users that I've met have a hard time remembering those kinds of things too. Um, just because I don't know how to describe it, but you know, you're. It's not like I'm in the moment all the time, but I mean like I I'm enough in the moment to not be keeping too close of tabs on every little thing that's happening. If that makes sense. I'm not recording it. I'm like absorbing it, but I'm not keeping track of it. If that makes sense. There's a subconscious
Mm,
log going on that's
oh, okay.
changing, you know? That's the introverted intuition. It's being impacted by the extroverted sensing, and it's giving me like this sense of what's going on in the world around me, but I don't understand it necessarily, and I don't have always like clear wayfinding through it to know that it was because of this mistake that I made, or because of I just will be like, well, no, that's a bad idea, you know. And
Hmm.
maybe if I sit and think about it, I can figure out why that's my point of view on it. But um, I found that to be true of a lot of other NI users. Is this weird like I don't know, this like strong connection to the reality right now, but not so strong of a log, so to speak, of what
I think
happened.
I think a few NI users described it as like being there, but also viewing things from like outsider perspective, so to say. So it feels kind of real and surreal at the same time,
Yeah,
if
sure,
that makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah, yeah. I think the higher
Uh,
you, the more NI you use, the more surreal it starts to get.
yeah, I think I've read somewhere that NI users don't view reality necessarily for directly what it is, but more so
Mm-hmm.
for their interpretation of it
Mm-hmm.
through
Mm-hmm.
their NI lens, since NI is pretty much everywhere for you, especially as an INFJ.
Yeah, yeah. INFJ.
So I have two questions for you actually.
Yeah, sure, sure.
Like, what is your relationship with the past? Like, do you tend to review certain events of your past, or do you have like a few flashbacks or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
or is it something that you cut off completely and don't even think about it, even on random occasions?
I guess the way I would describe it is, uh, I have a hard time feeling the passage of time to a degree, but I could look back and see like waypoints. But also, I don't know to what degree that I've managed to teach myself what those waypoints were by writing down a timeline of my entire life and looking at it. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Um, so, all the way from back to when I was a teenager, my parents were didn't believe that I had a bad memory. They thought I was always making excuses. But I did struggle with remembering things it's funny because like uh, some people say that they stay up late at night thinking about the embarrassing things that happened to them, and I can't remember those things. So I know that they happened. Like I know that I've been through very embarrassing things, but I'm most grateful that I can't remember them. um, but that doesn't mean that I can't. If given some memory key of some kind to that back to that moment, that I won't sit and be able to remember it. Um, I guess the way I would just say that is like I grew up in a very static environment because I was raised by an ISTJ and an ESFJ, so things were always the same every week, all the time. So when anything different happened, it stood out. It was like a big deal, you know? It's kind of like living in
Yeah.
a small town. Um, and so earlier in my life, I could see those markers a lot better because they stood out among the sea of nothingness almost. But then as I've gotten older and more things have happened to me and stuff like that, it all starts to become static, kind of. And like I said, I've written it all down and I know the chronology of my own life, and I can sit and remember major events and things that happened. But it's kind of like a story that I retell myself, I guess. It's like I'm not really remembering it like I was there. I'm remembering it like I'm telling myself the story of what it was to be there. If that makes sense.
Yeah, so you're like the third person narrator of your own story.
Sure. Yes, I'm asking myself to narrate my own story whenever I'm thinking back on those things. And I'm seeing it through some kind of lens. And oddly enough, I even started writing a. I haven't really talked about this because it's just some random thing that I had an idea to do. But a few years back, I mean, I've done psychedelics too, so I mean, my perspective has shifted to a degree. But
Oh,
um, I've begun to see the fourth dimensionality of a human life or myself, and I found this cool photo of that someone had taken of it was a time lapse of a bird flapping its wings, and it was taken over probably like a second or something, and you could see each of the frames of the bird as it was, and so it looked like this this moving slithering snake in the sky, but it was the bird flapping its wings, and so you're like seeing that bird through time, you're seeing that bird's passage through time as a fourth dimensional creature. And so I started writing this kind of like memoir sort of thing where I broke down every period of time in my life based on, um, like age 0 to 5, age 6 to 10, and so on, all the way till the end of my life. And then I write about different times in my life, the past, present, and future, from the age that I am right now in sequence. So if you then read 0 to 5, you'll see what I thought about age 0 to 5 at age 30, and then at age, you know what I'm saying? You'd see
hmm.
my own evolution of my point of view about the past changing, or the future, what I think about old age or death or whatever. Um,
Oh, okay.
so you're right that NI, a lot of NI usage means it's everywhere, which I would say the way I would recontextualize that is to say it's all encompassing in the sense that it's a theory of everything. It's a theory that where everything is all connected all at the same time, and that there isn't anything that you ever do or ever experience that isn't part of that somehow.
Oh, okay. And I think especially when you compare INTJs to INFJs,
Hmm.
how does your FE manifests or feeds into your NI compared to the TE that feeds into the NI of INTJs?
Yeah, that's a good question. Um, um, I think I mean I can't. I have to be real with the flaws of having extroverted feeling preference. One of the big flaws is that you're kind of meddling. You kind of like you're really aware of other people's feelings, and you're really then sort of get involved. And if you're using a lot of introverted intuition, you can intuit other people's feelings, and you can intuit why they're feeling that way. You can intuit how to try to fix it, and then you try to fix it. But so the difference of how like an ESFJ and an INFJ would do that, I mean, an ESFJ might do something similar, but they might be a lot more overt with it, and an INFJ might be a lot more subtle with it, to try to change the temperature of the room, so to speak, by sort of making a few different decisions that might be taken in subconsciously by the other person. So
Oh, okay.
try to engage people at a subconscious level. And then in an INTJ, I think they are overall. I think it just doesn't click with them why other people are feeling the way they're feeling. They seem to do really well with making sure that a group has a shared understanding of something, but then they struggle with how really truly getting a sense for how other people are feeling and factoring that into their intuition and really softening the blow of their words and things like that, because they know how that this is going to be received. I think INFJs are very kind of acutely aware of how their words are going to be taken, and they can tell when they're crashing and burning. It's painful. But I think INTJs, when they start crashing and burning in the same sense that an INFJ would, they either might not be aware or they might not care. So I think that's the difference, is that INFJs will be really sensitive to the pain of other people, and INTJs will be very sensitive to their own pain. And it's not that they're not going to be sensitive to the pain of other people ever, or anything like that. But what I mean to say is it's just not as high of a priority for them to be that sensitive about other people's feelings. There are cases where they will be, of course, but it's just not as important.
I think INTJs are really good at being empathetic. That means relating to someone and actually knowing how it feels to live through a similar situation than another individual, and then they are extremely, or rather, compassionate compared to their normal state, depending on their maturity, of course.
Right.
I think INFJs are usually good at like being sympathetic. That means like knowing how someone feels, eventually nurturing positive feelings, or being able to fix their emotional state.
Yes.
Or the emotional state of other people, even though they don't necessarily know how it feels.
Right.
Or they're just more compassionate in the classic sense, I guess.
Well, I'll tell you this, and I don't know if this is the case for other INFJs. I mean, anecdotally, I have heard some similar things, but the feelings of other people can cause me physical pain, physical anxiety. It may not. It's strange. It may not manifest in I have a feeling that this other person feels a certain way. It's more like they're like shedding energy off their body, and it's washing over me.
So like a negative vibe that influences you in a way too.
Yeah. And since I struggle with introverted feeling, I don't necessarily understand what I'm feeling. So that's a confusing, frustrating thing. So then I know something is wrong, and all I can do is see outwardly. So then I know, extroverted sensing, extroverted feeling. Okay, there's a problem out here. What's out here? What's our why is there not harmony between us right now? Why is that happening? I'll watch YouTube videos and get anxiety because of that, because I can sense the anxiety of the other person, or I can sense their feelings about what they're talking about, and I gotta shut it off because it's like coming right through the screen.
I don't usually have that problem. Well, I never had that problem to begin with, but I think strong emotional situations are extremely strange to deal with because you want to help a person, but sometimes you don't know how. Or
Mm-hmm.
sometimes when I tried to help someone, I just made it worse.
Mm.
And then after that, I felt extremely bad and just
Mm-hmm.
withdrew completely. But
Hmm.
uh, I think especially in times where YouTube drama is rising like the plague, I can imagine that is
Y-
rather annoying to deal with, actually.
for me, I,
I think
or
generally
I mean,
speaking, but
I'm not as anno. This is going to be another weird thing. I think I've noticed that, and I still think you're INTP probably. I think INTPs are really annoyed by, or actually, I'm going to say TP types. TP types get really annoyed by, uh, they just get very annoyed. um, strangely enough, the kinds of things that annoy me are probably would be very seem unusual to you, but the kinds of things that annoy me are certain sensory stimulations from people. So it could be they're saying something too repetitively, or it could be the tone of their voice. I once had a teacher at school. I had dropped the class. The tone of his voice hurt my ears, and I couldn't. It was abrasive to me. I couldn't be in the class.
hmm.
Um, Yeah, I mean, I can suffer fools. If somebody's being really stupid, I don't know. That just doesn't really phase me too much. But I've noticed TP types, they will not have any of that. Like my son is an ENTP, and he can't stand Michael Scott from The Office because he's a buffoon. And for some reason, he just can't take that. Uh, but I like a little buffoonery. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Hmm.
I'm down with that. I'm down with the stupidity.
I think every kind of show needs some sort of like comic relief, otherwise it becomes a bit too serious. Like, of course, there are shows that aren't necessarily the best fit for a comic relief. Like,
Hmm.
I don't know, the trickster kind of archetype, if that makes sense. But
Hmm. Yeah, it's a little flavor in the soup, right? If it's all the same thing, then it tastes the same way. And
well, there are tricksters that are extremely funny and witty because they, even though they seem stupid, they're actually rather intelligent. And then there
hmm.
are these kind of tricksters that are just dimwits.
Sure.
They can be funny as well sometimes, depending on the show and their character development. But uh, I think even looking back, when I was in middle school, I was more so the scholarly, condescending kind of guy that was
Yeah, yeah.
just shitting on everyone for thinking that intelligence equals grades. And my grades were rather good in middle school, so I thought,
Uh-huh.
okay, everyone who's beneath me is just inferior.
That's funny.
Well, then I entered high school and I turned into this trickster kind of archetype that we talked about
Uh
because my
huh.
grades just dropped.
Uh huh.
And that's the moment where you notice, okay, maybe you're not as good as you thought you were.
Yes. So does that change your theory on what you think your type is, or uh, let's see. Do you feel like you got any new information? Is a question I guess I could ask.
Well, INTP is a type that I didn't directly thought about in terms of
Hmm.
functions, but that encourages me to actually do my research more because maybe I
Okay.
missed something, maybe uh,
I mean,
I
my theory could be
interpreted
wrong
something
too.
wrong.
What were you saying?
What?
Sorry, what did you say? I missed that last part.
I have to do more research on that. So,
Hmm.
I mean, it's hard to say because you can interpret information different ways.
Hmm.
Um, like, I don't want to be the guy that says, okay, I'm definitely this type, even though it's obvious they're mistyped, you know?
Uh huh.
Uh, Especially if you look at the MBTI YouTuber scene, there are YouTubers that think they're a certain type, even though they're
Right.
not.
Right.
I don't want to directly call out names, otherwise, you're getting strike for this.
Really?
There were apparently cases that, um, yeah, tried to take down material that was very critical of a MBTI
Oh.
YouTuber's type.
Oh, interesting.
like at the end of the day, it doesn't do much because maybe my understanding is wrong or the understanding of other people. I don't know, because it's hard
Or
to tell if someone's a person or not.
right. I also have a video I just released called "How Seriously Should You Take MBTI?" I don't know if you saw that one. And
No, I haven't.
my answer is not much, but I mean, like compared to the real sciences, I had like a spectrum of evidence, like weak evidence over here, strong evidence over here, and I put MBTI on the high end of weak evidence. um, More than astrology and less than anything scientific. But it does. I would see it as more like a ruler, just something, just like a thing you would keep around the house. It's not there to save anybody's life, and it's not there to do any precise math with. But it's there for the times when you need to know how long an inch is. You know.
Or if you need to know how you can hack yourself in order to be more productive or whatever.
Yeah, sure, right. It's worth a try. Like if you have a theory, if you can use MBTI to come up with a theory about yourself, and then you apply that, and then it works, then it was great, right? It was helpful. So, uh, for me, I mean, I did. I actually first tested, took a test online. I got ENFJ. I was like, oh, that's cool. And then a few years later, took a different test, got INFJ, and then I read the description, and I was really creeped out because I felt like the author of that description had followed me around my whole life and like wrote things down about me from afar, like across in the street in the bushes or something, because you know what I mean? Like I was really
Yeah.
kind of weirded out. I was like, there's actually other people out there like me, you know? Like I thought that was really strange. I just had kind of accepted that I'm a weirdo, you know. But turns out there are other weirdos like me out there. Um, but it was really helpful for me, and even even after that, for a few years, I still even questioned my type, and even still did continue to do a lot of research. Um, I think I see from the people who come by this channel, it's the TI users that the ones that are spinning around and around on this over and over again on their type a lot.
I've seen that on high TI and high FI users. I think what I've seen by high
I could
FI
see that.
users
I could see
is
that.
they are questioning their identity and who they really are on a constant basis, I guess.
Yeah. I guess I haven't run into I've only run into 20 something people in this channel, and maybe a couple of INFPs, maybe a couple of ISFPs. So I wouldn't say that my sample size is very high, but I have run into a lot of INTPs and INFJs that were, you know, doing a lot of questioning.
Well, what I've seen by FITE users in general is, especially high FI users,
Hmm.
not this is not to shit on high FI users, they're
No,
great.
no, yeah, I know. Just your observation.
But once they set themselves out for a certain type, it's very hard to convince them that they're something else or
Right,
that they
right,
might be something else.
right. Because
And
it comes down to feeling. It comes down. I feel like I'm this type, so I have to be that type.
I think taking it too personally in terms of like, okay, this is maybe not you, maybe you're a different type, doesn't mean that you can't reach certain goals. I mean, an
Right.
ISFP can be a fucking
Yeah, yeah.
business CEO.
Of
An
course.
ESTJ can be a very caring, I don't know, caretaker, whatever they want
Mhm.
to be.
Mhm.
Just the way in which they approach these goals or their daily lives or
Right,
their
right,
life in general is very ESTJ or very ISFP in nature.
right.
So
What do you think about ISFPs or INTPs that you've met? Have you known any people of those types?
I haven't analyzed too many people in my immediate environments,
Okay.
to be honest.
Mhm.
I think I've met like one or two SFPs.
Mhm.
They can be relaxing in one
Mhm.
moment, but extremely intense in another moment, especially if they are going on attack mode or defense mode, depending on how
uh
you want to see it.
Sure.
That can be, well, a pain in the ass, but I've also seen NTPs who can be a pain in the ass because they try
Hmm.
to argue all day, all night about a certain issue that's going on, and everybody's like, please, just shut up for 1 second. I think my sister, for example, is an ENFP. I'm not sure.
Hmm.
Um, she's driving me nuts.
Yeah.
She's just, yeah. Uh,
Why do you say that?
what? Because she does things that you don't expect, or knows ways and how to bamboozle you in ways that you didn't even thought of. Classical any kind of
Uh-huh. Any
bamboozling
thing.
ways,
Yeah.
but especially when coupled with TE, it becomes sort of a powerhouse that just
Hmm.
pushes through whatever they set out themselves out for, and
Do you find that she
especially
creates her own reality around her?
uh more so her own interpretation, more so because
Hmm.
I don't know if that's a trend towards feeling types in general. That can be a trend towards thinking types as well. But my sister, for example, is very into social justice.
Hmm.
Like she's a political science student. She keeps up with all, all the injustice that's going on and
Hmm.
goes on, protests, whatever.
Hmm.
I'm the complete opposite of that. I always was more into STEM fields.
Hmm.
Was more detached and thought of my own good more so than the good of others.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah, I think the contrast is quite interesting.
It is. It is. I would consider myself a social justice advocate as well, although don't take that the wrong way. But it's a big priority for
It's
me as
not
well.
it's not bad. Like social
Right.
justice warrior and social justice in general has a negative connotation.
Right.
Like there are injustices in the world that you
Hmm.
need to combat. It's There are aspects, however, that you don't necessarily need to fight over or obsess over. And please don't take that the wrong way.
No, I don't. I don't. Uh,
uh,
I think I think the reason. I mean, I think the reason. I think it's down to evolution as to uh, how personality works in a society, and I think all the different parts of society work for different reasons. Some people are sustainers. Some people are shaking things up and innovating. Some people are trying to create progress, and some people want to keep things the way they are. Uh, Now, obviously, with climate change, we are facing an existential threat that won't sit on the shelf for and wait for us, kind of, to work through our issues. But generally, throughout human history, anyways, in a tribal mentality, you'd have the hunters and the gatherers and the shaman and the caretakers, and you know what I mean. You'd have all different kinds of groups
like
doing different things.
it's not a good thing to have like only healers in a group of a raid, for
Right.
example, or you need damage dealers, you need healers, you need
Right.
tanks in order to complete the raid
Mhm.
properly. So
Mhm.
everyone has their place and their like skill set that can come in handy. I
Mhm.
mean, even if you look at professions nowadays, uh, I
Yeah.
think STEM fields are heavily favored nowadays. But if you look at art, for example, like musicians or traditional artists, even they have their place because
Mhm.
art can sometimes inspire people to go into certain fields, even STEM
Yeah.
fields, and
No, yeah,
can
art
sometimes
and science have a very close relationship.
can inspire even scientists for different inventions or different kinds of experiments that can lead to innovation.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, I agree. 100%. Well, I don't know what type you are, my friend. I only have my theory, so
well,
you'll have to do your homework and come back in the comments, or maybe we'll do a follow-up video and you can tell me what you learned and what you thought of. I don't know, upon meditation.
But let's settle on INTP for now and see where everything is leading, because after all, it's just a theory, and I thank you for your time.
A game theory. You know what I'm talking about, Matt Pat. Anyways. Well, no, so yeah, no, I like, of course, my tendency is to want to be conclusive, right? I can't help it. I always want to be like, yes, I know for sure what the answer is. And a lot of times I can do these videos and I feel like I do know pretty sure. But also I do want to let people have an out to not feel like I'm boxing them in, that it really is a journey of self-discovery. You know, you only know what it's like to be inside your own head, and what it's like to live in your life and walk in your shoes. So no one else is going to be able to tell that to you. They can only just try to hold up a mirror and tell you what they're seeing, you know, through my lens, through my own
I mean,
viewpoint.
you're not telling me that I can't reach certain goals or that I can't do this or that. You're
Right.
just trying to describe how I process certain information. And that's not something that ultimately says, okay, you are nothing but this, and you can't go outside of your own comfort zone and stuff like that. So it's not a personal attack or stuff like that. That's stupid.
Right. Right. All right. Well, if you think this is an okay time to leave it, okay place to leave it, unless you have any other questions. Did I answer all your questions that you had, or do you have any more?
I currently don't have any more, but I like talking to you.
Well, I'm glad. All right. Well, and on that note, I mean, that sounds like as good a place as any to end it. So thanks for joining us, friends. Feel free to do the YouTube things, like and subscribe. And yeah, maybe we'll do a follow-up video, David. I don't know. Maybe we'll do a part C, and we'll come back and talk about what you learned.
David and Dan season 2.
Right, season 2. Let's see. I don't know. Come back in a few weeks. See what you think.
All right.
All right, cool. Well, have a good night. I'm gonna stop the recording. Thanks a lot, friends. Be good to each other and yourselves, or it's the other way around. I'm gonna get that right eventually. That's what
If you don't
Jerry's
subscribe to him, I will find you.
Oh, jeez.
That's how it goes.
It's gonna be
All right,
okay,
see ya.
friends. All right, take care.